What is anti-racism? And why is it becoming something that we have to talk about all the time now? How did anti-racism go from a phrase that didn't even exist to something that we are all expected to just, I don't know. We're all expected to obey. We're expected to do what anti-racism dictates for all of us. Politico has published an op-ed that's getting a lot of attention right now, and it is by a man named Ibrahim Kendi. And here's what he writes. And he is in some ways considered a founder of this idea of anti-racism, which I'll explain. But this is where this movement now has gone. To fix the, quote, to fix the original sin of racism, Americans should pass an anti-racist amendment to the U.S. Constitution that enshrines two guiding anti-racist principles. Racial inequity is evidence of racist policy, and the different racial groups are equals. The amendment would make unconstitutional racial inequity over a certain threshold, as well as racist ideas by public officials, with racist ideas and public officials clearly defined. It would establish and permanently fund the Department of Antiracism, comprised of formerly trained experts on racism and no political appointees. The Department of Racism would be responsible for pre-clearing all local, state, and federal public policies to ensure they won't yield racial inequity, monitor those policies, investigate private racist policies when racial inequity surfaces, and monitor public officials for expressions of racist ideas. The DOA, the Department of Antiracism, would be empowered with disciplinary tools to wield over and against policymakers and public officials who do not voluntarily change their racist policy and ideas. This is catching on. I know you might say, but come on, what is... No, this is becoming a big thing now. The Democrats are ascendant with the BLM movement and with the absolute panic and fear that you see from anyone who might even stand up and be willing to speak just a little bit about how they're uncomfortable with some aspects of this movement, or what does this movement really stand for, or why would anyone think that this is a good idea, right? Not allowed to say that. Corporate America, Goodyear even, although they've backed off it now. No, this, Blue Lives Matter is okay. MAGA still not okay, but Blue Lives Matter is okay. All right. Friends, here's what anti-racism is. It would be the creation of a racial entitlement state with a revolutionary guard of sorts, something similar to what you would have in the communist in communist countries, where there's a revolutionary party that sits atop the actual communist party. There's a revolutionary committee, a central committee, that makes the determinations about what goes and what doesn't, and that are above the rest of the law. So it doesn't matter, for example, what the Soviet Constitution says, because you have a revolutionary committee above it that will decipher for you what the real meaning of that Constitution is. They are a super legislature above any accountability to the people whatsoever. They are the alpha and the omega. They become everything. This is a movement that seeks to create something along those lines for racial equity purposes. Now, let's just start with some very basic principles here. Human beings are not defined by their race in any meaningful or moral way. Race is a superficial characteristic along the lines of hair color, along the lines of eye color. These are things that do not matter to one's worth or ability as a human being at all. So then why within society are we trying to empower people who would treat us very differently based upon skin color? Why do we think we're going to tackle the problem of racism by acting in explicitly racially conscious ways, racist ways? Same thing. They can try to dance around this, but it's the same thing. Well, because ultimately this is really all about power. Anti-racism is now a secular religion in America. It's a belief system that insists that you do what the anti-racists want, or else you are a part of the problem of racism. So what it does is eliminate neutrality in the identity politics conflicts. What it does is eliminate your ability to just be a good person who treats people well and is not a racist. That's insufficient because your very existence, your white skin, according to anti-racist belief, is evidence of your guilt in the white privilege system. So you, as a white person now, under anti-racism, have white guilt and, in fact, are guilty of being a part of the white privilege and white supremacy system in this country. So he says we need to create, through a constitutional amendment, a government body that would end racial inequity. And to this, I would say, well, is it only going to be against, or is it only going to be against white people? Are we to say, if we created, let's say, this what is it, the Bureau of Non-Racism or Anti-Racism, whatever it's called, Department of Antiracism, the DOA. DOA in police work means something else, or DOA can sometimes mean something on in legislative sense too, right? Dead on arrival. But if we were to create the DOA, and this idea I think is DOA, but nonetheless, if we were to create one, what would it do about the disparities between Asian households and white households when it comes to income? I would want to know. Let's put aside the more sensitive areas of racial discourse in America for the moment. Would the Department of Antiracism try to either pull down or push up white average household income so that it could catch up to its Asian counterparts, because Asians have a substantially higher household income? Would it ever try to address how we have a system of alleged white supremacy in this country that has somehow managed to put a non-white ethnic category in the top socioeconomic status in the country on a household-to-household basis? It would not deal with those things, right? No, this would become the Department of White Guilt and Liberal Dominance very quickly. That would be the point of it. The threshold questions for what's too much inequity in society. Well, who would get to make that distinction? How do we get to see the question? How do we get to see that issue, right? Who's going to be empowered to do that? Oh, it'll be a bunch of diversity educators on steroids, so to speak. This will be far beyond anything you've already seen. Why is this so effective? Why is this so effective? Because, as I was discussing at the beginning of the show, envy is powerful politics. It pollutes, it undermines, it divides, but envy is very powerful. We all want more than we have. We all want things that we don't have and that other people do. And it's always more psychologically comforting to believe that there is some injustice that has led to the lack of those things in one's own life. Now, put aside for a moment whether it is even a question of some injustice from within the system, what's the best way to deal with those injustices? What's the best way to make people freer, happier, healthier, more prosperous? Is it to put the government in control of more of their lives or less? In fact, the racial inequality of the past was government enforced. And yet now we're told that to deal with racial inequity today, the government will be in the position to determine how to balance this out through the Department of Antiracism. This is absolutely toxic. But it is a widespread belief now in the elite liberal circles in academia, media, Hollywood. And it also means that you're no longer able to just not be racist and feel okay about yourself. It enjoins you. It effectively conscripts you for the cause of left-wing identity politics, social justice, and the creation of a racial entitlement state. We will give to some people. The state will give to some people on the basis of race and take from other people on the basis of race. That's what whether you're talking about reparations or that's what the point of all this is. It also eliminates individual culpability, individual achievement. It treats us all as a collective. And then the power structure shifts based upon whoever sits atop it and determines who within that collective should be elevated and who should be suppressed. But this is government intervention that will only bring about more government intervention. It does not actually fix anything. You put your hand on the scale on one side, and then you feel the need to put your hand on the scale at the other, and then so on and so forth. It keeps going. The only real way to eliminate discrimination within our society is to eliminate discrimination within our society. To stop this obsession with constantly holding people either to blame or blameless on the basis of their skin color, which is what's happening right now with white privilege. White privilege is the elevation of an idea that white people all haven't earned at some level. They won't tell you how much, haven't earned what they have not achieved what they have achieved. There has been some invisible hand pushing them forward that holds others back. I don't believe that's true. But beyond that, I know the government can't fix that because they never talk about what it is the government is doing to make that happen, right? And they also never look at the root causes for the iniquities that exist within society, cultural, social, socioeconomic, structural issues that exist that are uncomfortable to talk about, like family units, like stability of a husband and wife married together. That's never discussed. No, instead you're offered be an anti-racist or you're a racist. We've been talking a bit about foreign policy today on the show. Let's get another voice in on the action here. A senior policy analyst from the Jewish Institute for the National Security of America, JINSA, Ariel Davidson, joins us now. Ariel, good to talk to you.
Thanks for having me on, Buck.
All right. Big thing first here is the deal with the UAE. There's been a lot of talk in the last couple of days, the DNC from Biden and Obama about their foreign policy. I don't remember them ever getting a deal involving Israel and the UAE that pretty much everybody paying attention said was a big step forward. What can you tell us about this?
It's a huge step forward, and I actually think it's going to sort of revolutionize the Middle East as we know it. I think we're going to start to see a lot of Arab nations take hints from the UAE-Israel deal. I'm thinking Bahrain, I'm thinking Oman, I'm thinking possibly Saudi Arabia potentially down the road. I think this just speaks to the fact that Donald Trump's foreign policy in the Middle East has been quite strong. And I actually would think that he might even be a contender for the Nobel Peace Prize. And I don't even say that jokingly. We know, of course, that there's a ton of, partisan hackery potentially involved with that selection. And so it's unlikely that he would get it. But I do think that he would rightly deserve it. And it speaks to the fact that, I think Arab nations as a whole right now are extremely frustrated with the Palestinians. And I think they realize that the greatest impediment to peace between Israel and the Palestinians is not Israel, it's the Palestinians. And so we're going to start to see, I think, a lot more normalization take place between Arab nations and Israel.
Now, we've also heard a lot in the last few days from the Democrats about the need to get back into the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Where are we now with the Trump administration on Iran policy specifically?
Well, as of right now, so Pompeo recently made the announcement, or actually Trump made the announcement that Pompeo is going to try to snap back sanctions against Iran. So essentially, prior to the JCPOA, there was a very rigorous sanction regime put in place against Iran. It consisted of 6 different UN Security Council resolutions. This snapback is essentially saying we're done with the JCPOA. We want to snap back into place all those prior sanctions. And the condition to do that is basically a non-performance on the part of Iran, which Iran has been flouting its non-performance for quite some time now. So we definitely have the legal basis to do it. There's definitely going to be some arguments that take place as to whether this snapback invocation is valid. But Buck, it's really important to remember that when the Obama administration tried to drag the Iran deal over the finish line, one of their biggest selling points was, hey, don't worry, we can always snap back sanctions if we're not happy with how Iran's performing. Problem is, they never envision the other party in power, and they never envision the other party in power that might actually invoke snapback sanctions. So I think it just speaks to the fact that there was a lot of poor planning on the part of those within the Iran deal echo chamber who tried to sell this deal with the snapback provision, and now they're upset that the Trump administration is going to use it. It's really quite ironic and very silly.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo pointed something out, and that is that during all the speeches, we've heard almost nothing during this DNC week about China. Producer Mark, play clip 21.
I've been terribly surprised that the Democrats haven't talked about foreign policy enough with no mentions of China. The single greatest challenge to the United States over the next years, the single greatest threat to the United States comes from the Chinese Communist Party. Donald Trump called it early. He talked about it during his campaign in 2015 and again in 2016. And now for 3.5 years, we've imposed cost on China in a way that has protected the American people from this threat. And when they refused to acknowledge the Wuhan virus, when they said, we're going to cover this up, we're going to allow people to travel across the world in spite of the fact that we know it presents a threat, President Trump is aiming to hold them accountable for the enormous loss of life all across the world and the trillions of dollars in economic harm that the Chinese Communist Party allowed to permeate all throughout the world.
What do we know about what the Democrats are planning for China? We didn't hear much about it this week, but do we have some sense of what would change?
I mean, their messaging has been really strange when it comes to not just China, but also Iran. I mean, they haven't really given us any hint whatsoever what their plan is beyond potentially re-entering another Iran deal. We have no idea what that deal might look like. We have no idea kind of how the Biden camp is positioning itself vis-a-vis China or Iran. I think it also speaks to the fact that they just don't really have a coherent foreign policy vision in place. And I just think it speaks to the fact that Obama's foreign policy was so abysmal. And so if Biden tries to ride on the tails of that or try to do, Obama 2.0 in the Middle East or Obama 2.0 when it comes to China, it's going to, the Trump campaign is going to hit them hard on that because in both fronts that they were a complete failure. And I think at least when it comes to China, I think that is our biggest threat right now. And I think the Trump administration has been very cognizant of that. And I supremely applaud Secretary of State Mike Pompeo for being so clear-headed about it. Do you remember, Buck, like a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about TikTok? I can't tell you how many articles I came across that were from these left-wing journalists who were like, TikTok is not that big of a threat. We shouldn't be worried about it. The Trump administration just wants to go after young American children. I was thinking, my goodness, the short-sightedness of those who are in our national security reporting community is absolutely tragic. So I think one of the things that the Trump, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you go ahead. It's fine.
Oh, no, I was just going to add that the Trump administration, if they were smart about this moving forward, they would really position themselves as, they would really position the Trump administration as an administration that would go after our adversaries in a way that Biden just seems, hasn't really put together any sort of plan of attack. And so, if that means we have to be hardline, we have to be hardline.
Ariel Davidson, everybody, go read her latest over at the Jewish Institute for the National Security of America, where she's a senior policy analyst, and follow her on Twitter. Ariel, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, Buck.
Team Buck, it's time for roll call.
Roll call, everybody. Facebook.com/Buck Sexton. Team Buck at iHeartMedia.com. And, maybe one day we'll just put producer Mark's personal phone number up there in case you guys, just want to send him a little text to wish him a good night's sleep or something, because he feels like he hasn't heard from enough of you this week.
That sounds like a really good way to get me to find a new job.
Yeah. I'm hoping that they don't start looking for hockey play-by-play announcers or something. Then I'll be in trouble. What would be? I'll ask you this legitimately. What it would be the dream sports commentary job? Like, what's the best?
Like for me personally?
Yeah, like on any show. If you were doing sports stuff only, any show, is it play-by-play? Is it your own ESPN? Is it what's the height? What's that HBO sports thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, real sports. It's not that. I want to preface this by saying none of this will ever happen. But hockey play-by-play would be my number one, or maybe the morning show at WFAN hosting that.
Who's the best hockey play announcer?
Oh, Doc Emrick by far.
Wow, I just learned. I never even heard of this guy. It's a cool name though.
He's the best ever.
Okay, well there we go. All right, good to know. I'm still going to, when the world stops ending, I'm going to take producer Mark to a hockey game. We're going to come back and do a whole post-wrap analysis of it. But in my unlike the Malta podcast, which is just on me now, and like every night I go to sleep thinking, damn it, Buck. But it's going to happen. But the hockey thing was not my fault because the world ended and there was no more hockey. But we will take producer Mark to a season.
Basically, as soon as you committed to going to a hockey game, we're not allowed to go see sports anymore. Thanks,
yes, Buck. I know. Coincidence? Perhaps. Let's get to the inbox here. Marina. Producer Mark, when speaking of gumbo, you must remember the vast majority who make gumbo are Cajun, and Cajuns will eat anything. This isn't criticism. They are rather proud of their ability to live off the land or even the sewer to find meat for their gumbo. Therefore, a porcupine and a frog are good eaten. I did not know that.
What is their own?
I don't even know the difference between gumbo and jambalaya. Aren't they kind of similar?
There's rice in jambalaya, but there isn't in gumbo. I really don't know.
Cajun, I guarantee. It'd be like, Cajun accent is cool. I hear it I've heard it rarely in my life, but I have heard it a few times. And, it's definitely an unusual one. So I guess my Cajun sounds like Quebecois. It's kind of which is not correct. So
a lot of your accents sound similar, but
yeah,
it's because Elizabeth Warren with the porcupines and the frogs. That's the only reason we're talking about this.
Oh,
one of your impressions.
She makes the best gumbo, just like the Native American gumbo she used to make, because the Native Americans also made gumbo. Believe it or not. Oh, it is just rice. Producer Nick says that. Producer Mark, I'm impressed. You knew that the difference was rice.
I don't know why I knew that.
That was really like, that's like your secret architectural expertise that you pulled out that one time.
It's just one of those random things I know, but I had no idea I knew it.
That's what's on the menu this week? Anything exciting on the menu this weekend?
We don't figure that out until my wife gets home on Friday night.
Fair enough. All right, back into it here. But I would love some jumbo. God, I keep saying jumbo. Gumbo or jambalaya. I keep confusing them in my head.
Are there no good Cajun places in Manhattan? I'm sure there's got to be one.
There is a Johnny Utah's, a bar not too far from where I live, based on the character from Point Break. It's like a surfer bar.
I've heard of that bar.
Yeah, I'll take you and producer Nick there sometime when the world opens up. Brian, Buck, and Mark. From what I see, President Trump is the first president in 40 years who has not prescribed to interventionism with new active wars. Heck, they chastise him when he tries to get us out of Afghanistan. Seems to me this election is between the neocons versus the isolationist, liberty-minded pacifists. Most of my Democratic family and friends would be surprised to know they're on the side of the industrial war machine. This is a strong point to remind the libs of come November 3rd. Thoughts? Yeah, I think that the president, look, one of the great mistakes of the Republican Party of the last 20 years was the neocon interventionism. And I think a lot of us learned a lesson about that, especially anybody who spent time in those war zones, particularly if you spent time in uniform and combat in those war zones. I think that at the end of the day, there was a real sense that our leadership put us on this pathway without really thinking through exactly what the long-term consequences of all this were going to be. And yeah, I no longer, I'll tell you this, if the government, if I were serving, which I have not been in the military, but if I were called up to serve and they told me, okay, we're going to deploy you to some foreign country and the mission is to make them have nice, free, fair elections and to remake the country, the answer is a flat no. It's a flat no. It's not what we have. It's not what our military should be doing. It's the wrong strategy. We shouldn't be putting our men and women in uniform in a position where they have to do that, where they are asked to do that as part of the mission. That should not be the mission. Ricky. Oh, and before I get to Ricky, Trump has avoided that so far. And I think he deserves a tremendous amount of credit for it. Trump, because of what the polls say or because he doesn't want to look weak like Obama did. So Obama made decisions about war and peace. I actually had libs, I'll tell you, I had lib analysts at CNN when I was over there. Some of their national security analysts would agree with me, some of the smarter ones, one or two of them. Bob Baer, who like me was ex-CIA, who is smart, unlike a lot of the other CNN. I mean, he's a liberal, but he is smart. He's not a dumbass. like a lot of the other national security analysts, especially the more recent ones they have over there are horrible, but you don't know who they are because who watches CNN? But he agreed with me once when I was on air, and I just said, Obama is surging troops in Afghanistan so that he looks, because Afghanistan is the good war and Iraq is the bad war, and so he wants to look like he's different than Bush and he's tough. You shouldn't send people into harm's way over that. You shouldn't send people to a place where some of them are going to die, and that happened. We lost more Marines in Helmand and Kandahar. We lost more soldiers in combat under Obama than we did under Bush in Afghanistan by far. Does that ever seep into people's minds over this? No, because the media didn't cover it because they're disgusting frauds. Ricky. Hey, Buck, Lawrenceburg, Kentucky podcast listener. All right, Kentucky. At the end of your show, you were talking about terms. The term limit for a president who takes office midterm is 10 years. So if Creepy Joe held on for 2 years and one day, she could run for 2 more terms. So scary. Shields high, Ricky. Ricky, if that's true, that's a really cool fact. I did not know that. So
I looked it up. It is, in fact, true.
It is true. Well, that would be an important thing to know. So, Ricky, great throw. Ricky just added some spice in our gumbo. I guarantee. Right?
That was French. You did French.
I do the Cajun. I'm like, les poissons, he, oh.
You're just offending people.
Our Cajun listeners know I love them.
That doesn't mean they're going to be happy with you with that ridiculous accent.
I mean, it's okay. They'll just call into the voicemail so I get better at the accent. That's what'll happen.
Nobody's listening to that.
Yeah. So, Eric, next up here. I have an idea for a T-shirt for producer Mark. You think you've got it rough. I work with Fat Thor. Eric. Funny. At my expense. You got a guffaw for producer Mark, so you like that one. But yep.
Thor is definitely trademarked. Otherwise, that would already be on a T-shirt.
Oh yeah. No, I could go for that. Zach, hey Buck, I just want to say I love the show. I have a 40-minute drive to work every day, so listening really makes the time go by quick. I have a question tonight. I saw you on Tucker Carlson. Noticed your hair looked much more sprayed than what it does when I watch you on the first YouTube channel. Is this an accurate observation? Anyway, keep up the amazing work. Shields high. I mean, usually for the first of all, Zach, thank you for listening, and I'm so glad that we get to hang out with you during your commute, and I really appreciate that we're a part of your day-to-day, and welcome. Great to have you on the team. As for the helmet, a.k.a. the hair, I usually before I go on Fox, because I don't want I get all animated, and it can be kind of hot in the studio. So fun fact, they actually send you now a van, a mobile studio. So it's like, Buck, do you want to do your shot from a van down by the river? Pretty much. I get into like this shady van that looks a little bit like a van that would be, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to say it looks like a meth lab, but I mean, it definitely looks like stuff could be going on in there. Because it's kind of it's one of those, is it a conversion van they call it when it's a sort of a big van? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's like bigger than a normal van, but it's like a super van.
Where do you park that in Manhattan?
The streets are empty.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, there's nobody out there right now. So it's easy. So yeah, they just pull up to your house and you go inside and it's like a man with a van. You just go in there.
Wait a
and
minute.
They do
So a van pulls up in front of your apartment and you just get into the van?
Yes. And
I'm
wearing a suit top and pajama pants and flip-flops. And the people in my building who see this are definitely like, what? And I go in there for 10 minutes and I come out a little bit sweaty and they're like, what's going on in there? I'm just saying. That's
the best thing I've ever heard in my life.
It's true. It is true. I come out, I'm a little sweaty and my hair is a little ruffled up and I'm like, whoo, another session in the van. I'm just telling you. It's true.
Can't you just walk to the studio?
No, it's locked. You can't. It's not allowed.
You're not allowed in. Yeah.
COVID. Yeah. No, otherwise I totally would. Yeah, no. That was the whole. People are like, why you live in Midtown? I'm like, so I can get to our radio studio and I can get to our Fox hits. And now it's like both of those things don't even matter. So clearly, I did not.
So you go into a van and get sweaty.
So I go into a van and get a little sweaty with the man with a van. Zach. Oh no, Zach was just now. Katherine with a Y. I will tell you, fun fact, I have in my life had 3 girlfriends, all named Katherine, all spelled with a Y. That's not all the girlfriends I've ever had, but stretching back to high school, I've dated 3 girls named Katherine with a Y. I don't know. And they were all blondes. I don't know. It's like, I'm not saying I have a type, but I'm just saying that
I think
Snow Princess is blonde, but her name is not Katherine, so.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Snow Princess.
Yeah, it's Snow Princess. Obviously.
Is that on her birth certificate, or how does that work?
Yeah, totally. No, there's just like a snowflake and then a little princess emoji.
Of course.
That's all that they need. They're like,
That's not that. You know, one day somebody's going to actually name their child something like that. 2 emojis.
Oh, what if you just named your kid Emoji?
Oh, that's got to be a real name.
Oh, I'm sure someone's already done that. Yeah.
Of course.
I mean, if celebrities can name their kids Apple, and isn't
why do you have to go after my boy Chris Martin like that?
Yeah, I know you love Coldplay. Isn't Ivy Blue Jay-Z's kid's name?
Blue Ivy.
Blue Ivy. Yeah. See, look
the
at
only one I
the pop culture reference. High
Kim
five.
and Kanye's baby North. I actually found that funny. Northwest.
Is that true? No.
Yeah, no, they have a baby named Northwest.
No, come on.
I'm not screwing with you.
No way. You're just big, silly man.
I'm not.
We'll check into
Google
this
it.
one. Catherine, not my girlfriend. What a great interview with VP Pence. You're doing an amazing job. Kudos to you and producer Mark. Catherine, thank you so much for the very kind note. Look, it was a great chat with Vice President Pence, and I'm so glad that you appreciated it. So thank you for writing in on it. We thank you. Richard, Buck, what the hell is Build Back Better? It sounds like something from an elementary school kid. It is either bad grammar or sounds like something from a local car ad. Tell me what you think about this. Since Bush the Elder, and maybe further back, every time the next in line candidate runs, they have lost. So Dole was next in line during Clinton. Dole lost. Gore was the VP after Clinton. He lost. Then Kerry was next. He got swift-voted. McCain was the GOP Huckleberry. He lost. Mitt Romney was the next heir apparent. He lost. And Hillary was owed for Clinton's cheating on her, and she lost. Creepy Joe now follows Obama, and now I really hope he loses. Shields lift higher. Let me see. Every time the next in line candidate wins, I'd have to kind of look at your whole line of analysis here, Richard, but you're a smart man, and I appreciate you writing in. Thank you. Roll call, a little more to finish up for this week before we send you off to have a fantastic weekend. Andre, howdy Buck, howdy Mark. In your Kamala and Obama lecture segment, you highlighted a long-standing difference between conservatives and libs, or if I have come to know these groups, patriots and nuts. As I was saying, the difference is that conservatives think and Democrats feel. Buck and Mark, thank you for the great program. Andre, thank you for the succinct analysis of one of our segments from the show yesterday. We appreciate it. And yes, it is true. Conservatism at least strives to be about emotions and truth and knowledge and wisdom. I'm not saying it always is. I'm not saying it's perfect, but that's what it strives. Democrats are about what feels, what the emotions are, what the I can't even think of a better way of saying it. What feels good. So that's what they're all about. Julian. Hey, Buck, you were talking about nepotism and how it's something Trump does that you don't agree with. Well, I don't agree with it either. I can have some patience or understanding with wanting people he can trust around him. Think about all the advisors and deep state morons, Democrat and Republican, he's had around him that end up burning him at some point. I think nepotism would be more of a problem if he were to appoint a family member to the Supreme Court or something like that. Love the show. Shields high, brother. Julian, yeah, we can certainly discuss and have opinions on the degree of nepotism and the special circumstances of it. I'm just saying nepotism is bad, and you know we can't say it's bad unless Trump does it. Then we start to sound like liberals, right? But it could obviously be worse. He's not appointing Jared Kushner to be Secretary of Defense, right? I mean, there are some things that I think would be even he has them just around him as advisors, but nepotism is bad. Simon writes, hey, Buck, Shields High from North Carolina. I'm a new subscriber. I love the show so far. Really appreciate your high praise of my home state. Aside from some occasional mask wearers, you can walk the streets here and not even know you're in a pandemic, which is quite refreshing. I have 2 questions. Since Democrats insist that Trump was not a duly elected president in 2016, shouldn't he be allowed to run again in 2024? In fact, he should keep running and winning until the libs admit he's legit and suck it up for 8 years. Number one, I like your thought process, but the answer is no, that's not going to happen. Number two, did you try the BBQ down here? Simon, because you're a new listener, I'm just going to say welcome to the team, and I will plead the fifth on having vinegar-based sauce on my barbecue versus more of the Memphis or Dallas-style barbecue that I'm used to. I will plead the fifth because I love my North Carolina Team Buck so much. And Texas Team Buck is right now just looking at us all like, Have a great weekend, everybody. Shields high.